questions, each candidate will have 1 minute for a closing statement.
Great.
And we'll go in reverse order,
Okay.
the opening statement.
Sounds great.
You are second.
Okay.
Yes, a little while ago, Pat pulled names out of a hat, and we established the order that way.
Yes.
So you are second.
Okay, thank you very much.
Okay, so K-Top is ready to start. Are there any other questions before we start?
I just want to be sure that Clifford knows about the timer colors. He joined later.
True.
Okay, you want to tell him, Anna?
Sure. So Clifford, not sure if you see the green screen.
Yes, I do. Yes.
Perfect. And then, so the timer colors will go from green to yellow to red.
Okay, great.
Just like the timer just showed.
Yeah, they showed me. Yeah.
And then the yellow means you have 15 seconds left.
Okay, great.
Okay, you guys ready?
We're ready.
All right, good luck to everybody.
Thank you.
Okay, Diane.
Okay. Welcome, and thank you for being with us tonight to hear candidates for the office of Oakland Unified School Board District 7. I am Diane Lewis of the National Coalition of 100 Black Women, Oakland Bay Area Chapter. In conjunction with the League of Women Voters of Oakland, we bring this candidate forum to you tonight. The National Coalition of 100 Black Women is an advocacy organization with more than 60 chapters nationwide, advancing leadership development and gender equity for Black women and girls, primarily in the areas of education, health, economic empowerment, and civic engagement, most notably voter education. The League of Women Voters is a trusted, nonpartisan organization that encourages informed and active participation in government. The League does not support or endorse candidates or parties. The advocacy arm of the League may take positions on issues such as ballot measures. This forum is presented by the Voter Service and Education arm of the League, which does not take positions or advocate for candidates. I'd like to remind everyone that the candidates have all agreed to participate under guidelines set for the forum. Please be aware that campaign literature or other forms of campaigning, such as buttons and t-shirts and signs, are not for display in this virtual forum in order for us to maintain neutrality. We are recording tonight's forum and broadcasting through the city's K-Top, and the session will be available on the League's YouTube channel for the broader community to access. You can find links on our website, lwvoakland.org, or through votersedge.org/CA. You can live tweet us at LWV_Oakland. We have one race on the agenda tonight, and it will be for the position of Oakland Unified School Board District 7. Prior to tonight's forum, candidates were asked by the League's Education Committee to complete an in-depth questionnaire on their campaign. Those questionnaires can be found at the League's website under Learn Who is Running for School Board. There are 5 candidates running for this District 7 position. They are Christina Molina, Ben Tapscott, Bronché Jerard Taylor, Clifford Thompson, and Victor Valerio. Now let's go over a few ground rules. Each candidate has 2 minutes for their opening remarks. The order was determined in advance by the League in a random fashion. The timekeeper will signal candidates with an indication of time left by the presence of a green, yellow, or red tile icon. Questions were submitted in advance and were screened to avoid duplication and personal attacks. The order of answering the questions will be alternated, and each candidate will have 1.5 minutes to respond to each question. Again, the timekeeper will signal candidates. There will be no separate rebuttals. However, the candidates may choose to use some or all of their 1.5 minutes to rebut the response given by another candidate. We ask that the attendees tonight use the Q&A icon to submit your question, as the public chat icon is not usable for tonight. After the prepared questions, we will review the questions submitted by the viewers, and each candidate will have 1.5 minutes to respond. Candidates may choose not to use all of their allotted time. Following all of the questions, each candidate will have 1 minute for a closing statement. Now, let's begin with the opening statements, which will be 2 minutes. Our first candidate, Bronché Jerard Taylor, may begin now.
Hello, my name is Bronché Jerard Taylor. Known to most students and everyone else in Oakland, it's just Bronché. I don't consider myself a politician, rather a socially engaged artist that has a really special and unique way of reaching youth. Youth development is what I say is one of the special gifts that God just gave to me. It's innately something that I was able to do. And with this gift, I was able to acquire a job working at Castlemont, working at Frick, working at McClymonds, working at RM Prep, and at OSA, Oakland School of the Performing Arts. So I have experience working in both public and district-run public schools and charter schools. And about me, I just think that it's important for people to know that I come from a family that really strongly has instilled in me the value of education. My relative is Denise Jeffrey. She's been in the Oakland Unified School District for over 20 years and is still working in education right now at Mills College and more on a freelance base. But other than Denise Jeffries as well, my grandfather was the first Black chemistry professor at Prairie View College in Texas. So working in education is just something that we innately believe is important for not just our family, but for everyone. I believe I'm compelled to run because I've worked in the district for over 10 years and I'm not satisfied with the outcomes. A lot of people or a lot of candidates will give you their background and their experience of working inside of the district, and they will use that as a qualification. But in a lot of ways, you have to ask yourself this question. If you've been working in the district for all these years, and we are at this place right now in this time, what have you done? What have you done? I believe that I represent this new young generation of woke, if you will, or lit and ready young people who want to change the way things are done.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Clifford Thompson.
Hello, my name is Dr. Clifford Thompson, and I want to thank you for inviting me to participate in this forum this evening. I'm a longtime resident of East Oakland, and I've been in education for approximately 40 years. I've been a teacher, an assistant principal, a county coordinator, and also a college professor. And I've taken all of that experience and I've gone back into the classroom where I teach 5th grade. I believe all students can learn to high levels, as demonstrated by my receiving 80% of my students meeting or exceeding their reading targets in only 6 months. I really care about community voice. That's really important to me. And as a result, I believe that we should have diverse numbers of voices at the table. In other words, we should have everyone at the table, and we should use what I call honesty, transparency, and responsibility as board members. Not only do I hold these values, I am really prepared, I'm experienced, I'm relational, and I'm results driven. That said, as a board member, you can rely on me being current on issues and a voice for the underrepresented and very solution driven. So I've decided to run for the OUSD Board District 7 on 4 basic premises. 1, pedagogical issues. We need somebody who has taught and has been a principal in K-12 settings so that you can actually understand exactly what is being presented. You can understand how to have a conversation with the superintendent. The second thing is educational equity. We need to have someone as a board member to champion all of the issues for equity for students. I believe in balancing the budget and, of course, in this COVID pandemic, having educational access for all students.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Victor Valerio. Is Mr. Valerio with us?
Yes. He has to unmute himself.
Oh, please.
Hello?
Yes, there you are. Thank you.
Thank you. Well, first of all, I want to thank everyone for inviting us to this panel and to have this great discussion about why we're running for District 7. My name is Victor Valerio, and I'm running for District 7 as a former student who's attended Oakland Public Schools. I've walked in the students' shoes. I've been in their classrooms. I've attended Oakland from K to 12, and I graduated from Fremont and I'm honored, and I'm actually been proud to have graduated from Oakland Public Schools, having attended Lazier, Oakland Charter Academy, and Fremont High School. I understand our students. I've walked in their shoes. I'm coming from a perspective of a former student who understands the good and the bad that have happened in the district, not just in the last 10 years, but also in the last 20 years. I'm running because I have witnessed rush justification for school closures and divestment, community disengagement, and a defeatist view toward public education in recent years. As a public education should be a beacon of hope, trust, and innovation. It is our job to implement transparency, accountability, and community engagement. As a candidate for the school district, as a candidate for the school board, I'm working trying to avoid further school closures, increased allocation to academic support to low-performing schools in our district, uphold rigorous curriculums for our students to make sure they're prepared competitively as other students who are attending good, stellar schools or vocational and apprenticeship programs. Find additional funding and revenue in innovative ways in order to keep fiscal solvency afloat for our school district, improve and strengthen communication with the community, and come again as a school district a building block for community empowerment. These are the reasons why I'm running. And what we've seen so far has been a distrust that's been built up because of lack of transparency and accountability. And these are the reasons why I'm running, and these are the reasons why I'm willing to work with community, with parents, with teachers, in justifying the decision-making process to make sure everyone's informed, the best decisions are being made, and we're doing due diligence with the information we're provided and getting.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Ben Tapscott. Mr. Tapscott, are you muted?
I don't believe Ben's joined us as yet.
Okay. All right, then our next speaker will be Christina Molina.
Yes, thank you. Hello, my name is Cristina Molina. I am a Chicana cisgenders, pronoun she, her, hers, ella. I am a proud daughter of farm workers that were unionized by Dolores Huerta and Cesar Chavez. I have been an activist for 20 years, where 15 years were dedicated to the anti-rape movement, human traffic, sexual harassment, domestic violence movement. I've also been an instructor for 10 years dismantling systems of oppression by conducting educational classes on ageism, ableism, sexism, immigration empowerment, fat oppression, and LGBTQIQ AAP plus rights, just to name a few. I'm also a proud mother of 4 OUSD students, 2 who are special learners. I am running because I believe that a child's report card is an indication of the child's overall well-being, both mental, physical, and also emotional. So when I see that a child gets an F or a D, I see that as a cry for help. And we must respond to that call with equitable wraparound services for both the student and the family. And we also need to launch a full-blown investigation as to who or what is hindering the success of that child. We must begin to move from a false idea of equality to a more just, progressive agenda of equity. Children from the flatlands in my District 7 are facing far more community and environmental stressors than children from the hills. And we must begin to address those issues with more school resources. Also running to provide more transparency, accountability, and restoration of our OUSD budget, and with a demanding annual independent audit. Thank you so much to the League of Women Voters for inviting me today. I am, by the way, the only female that is running in this race. Thank you.
Thank you all very much. Now we'll start with our prepared questions. Our first question goes to Bronché Taylor. Here's the question. How do you envision your role on the school board? What particular strengths and skills will you bring to the board? And can you describe your community involvement and how it has prepared you to serve on the school board? You have 1.5 minutes to respond.
So the way that I view my role or my job as a school board representative for District 7 is to be a representative for the community of District 7. So that means that I'm not making decisions by myself. And what I plan to do in order to ensure that I'm living up to that is I've created 3 committees that are a part of my platform. Parent committee, teacher committee, and a student committee. These committees will advise me on what they think and feel and how they want me to actually vote or weigh in my opinion on the policies. Does that mean that I'm not allowed to give my opinion? No. It means that I'm able to sit with these committees and talk with them about what's going on and give them my vantage point. But if they say something that is stark opposite of what I believe, and the numbers are larger and that's what they say and that's where they want me to go, then that's what I would do, because that's what representative public office is about. It's not about getting in here and making decisions for you based off of what my criteria or my job experiences have taught me. However, I will say this. I was a student trustee at San Joaquin Delta College in Stockton with representing over 15,000 students at that time, making decisions with budgets that were pretty similar to that of OUSD. And I'm just really here to work with parents, students, and teachers to make decisions, not to move forward as business as usual, which is what I'm hearing a lot of.
Thank you. Same question for Mr. Thompson.
Okay, thank you very much. First of all, I want to say that I am proud to be part of Oakland's long history of commitment to equity. However, I think it's important for us to understand that we have to make one step farther, instead of simply having a commitment, but actually doing something with that commitment, actuating that commitment. And so, but then when we think about the commitment, it includes things like the African American program that we have had here, a rapid response to newcomers that come to our district. It includes policies for full service schools and the unanimous vote for radically reimagining campus policing. However, the one thing that I talk about in terms of my role is I am an individual who has taught in the classroom for many years, a person who has been an administrator for many years, a person who has attended the board meetings for many years, and a person who is overall really understanding of and know what's going on in the Oakland Unified School District. And because of that, I say my experience allows me to make certain that there are equitable opportunities for all kids. So as a board member, I would require the superintendent to clearly articulate the processes in the program to meet all of our equity goals. I would call for a budget proposal that's clearly aligned to equitable goals. And I would also use my experience and expertise in knowing how to allocate funds appropriately.
Thank you. Next respondent is Victor Valerio. I'm sorry, I was muted. Our next respondent, Mr. Valerio.
Thank you. I envisioned my role of the school board director by engaging with the community in building trust again. For the last 10 years, the community has lost trust because of the status quo of making decisions, rushed decisions, without due diligence or discussions with the community. That will be the first step as a school board director, is to build up trust again. As a transportation project engineer, I have prepared myself to understand municipal bonds, engage with all stakeholders in order to deliver what's been promised. Ultimately, when it comes down to the school sites and the community, we need to strengthen and build up the network of the principal in communication. Anything to move forward, communication is essential in every aspect. And based on that principle, I will take the canons of the site-based management team model and apply them to the school sites and with PTAs across our district in order to get community input on any topic, on policy, on items before the decision is being made at the school board. I see myself as a vehicle and as a platform representing the community. And more importantly, I see myself to take advantage of this moment to rebuild the trust the community has lost toward the school board. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Molina. I'm sorry, Mr. Valerio. I'm sorry, jumping ahead. Next respondent, Ms. Molina.
Yes, thank you. So the role that I envision on the school board is really to build community trust for the current board. And we do that through really dealing with what I see are the most urgent problems that we have currently at the OUSD, and that's budget. We need to build a strong, resilient, transparent budget. And I'm planning on educating and training the school site committees to discern the red flags in the school budget and provide parents with a comprehensive budget that is easy to follow and understand. I remember when I was part of the school site committee and the budget was very convoluted, very difficult to understand. Also, it's very difficult even to find it right now on the website. I remember I need to get the assistance of administrators for me to actually find out where was our school budget. So, you know, the school budget needs to be easily understood by all school parents, students, and community stakeholders. And an annual independent audit will also help build more transparency. We also need to deal with financial resiliency. We need to pass measures at the local, county, state, and federal levels to fund our schools. Similar to Proposition 15, we also need to continue to remove police from schools, not only in the city of Oakland, but also at the county level to make sure that more of those property taxes are being expended on our children. And finally, you know, we need to provide a more equitable lens to our budget to be able to meet the needs of our most disenfranchised students here in District 7, which are mainly African American, Brown, Indigenous, and APA students. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Our second question will be directed first to Mr. Thompson. Here's the question. Please provide examples of what you have done that reflects a commitment to K-12 public education.
Okay, thank you very kindly. That's a very good question. I think I understood everything you said. To be very honest, your voice was it was cut off a little bit, but I think it's my commitment to examples of my commitment to K-12 public education. And I go back when I first, or near my first starting, when I was at Franklin Year-Round School. I was just rehearsing this just the other day, and I was thinking about the number of kids who have come through my class, and now they are contributing to society at a very high level. For example, I had a young lady who came to my class who could not speak English at all. At the end of the year, she was actually testing at the 6th grade level in comprehension. I had a student who came to my class who's presently now a practicing physician in New York City. I had a person come through my school, my class as a college professor, and that person is now a superintendent in New York City. So I've had a number of students who have come to my come through my class, and now they're doing quite well. But the basic premise is equity and high quality education for all students. I want them to be competitive and able to compete with any other person in any other school. Therefore, equity is really my primary goal for all students. And so my experience is I have prepared kids who can now compete with anybody on any stage.
Thank you. Mm-hmm. I'm going to repeat the question. Apparently, I got cut off. I'm sorry. The next respondent will be Victor Valerio, and let me read it again. Please provide examples of what you have done that reflects a commitment to K-12 public education, particularly in the Oakland Unified School District. For example, please list and describe significant volunteer efforts, professional experiences, completed projects.
Thank you. Thank you for your question. To start off, to show my commitment, my parents relied on public education because it was a public investment for a public good. It was also what my parents could afford. It is what's accessible to all families across District 7, are their neighborhood public schools. Myself, including 4 of my sister, all 5 of us attended public schools. And we've seen the good and the bad in the process. And the reason we are committed is because we know that the beacon of public education in our neighborhood provides accessibility to a better future for all students, despite incomes, despite backgrounds, despite any differences between colors, ethnicities, or backgrounds. And it's also the fact that families entrust our public schools. In the last 2 years, I've been volunteering as a committee member for the Citizen Oversight Bond Committee for ABNJ. And we have worked together collaboratively to make sure that all the public funds have been directed and allocated for the renovations of our schools listed within the bond language of A, B, and J. I've also worked as a volunteer, as a project lead for Engineers Without Borders for the last 5 years. We've been working in a rural water system down Panama, making sure that there's enough water for families who live in a rural area which have lacked any recent upgrades or investments from local governments. I have shown and committed that I'm willing to work with all stakeholders for the betterment of the community in the last 10 years professionally as an engineer. But importantly, I've also been involved since junior high and high school to be part of the larger community of students who have attended Oakland Unified School District. And as we have pursued every class in the past, we've always wanted to make sure that the next class or the next generation had something better provided to them than what was provided to us. And that was inculcated from my own family because as being the eldest sibling of 5, you always want to make sure that the one after you gets a little better experience than the one you had. And for that, and that shows my commitment why I'm running for the school board directorship in District 7. I want to make sure that everybody has the opportunity to participate, engage, and succeed in graduating from high school, and to make sure they are prepared for the landscape that is the real world outside, whether it be in college, whether it be a vocational or apprenticeship program, or whether it be in employment after graduation.
Thank you. Same question to Ms. Molina.
Yes, thank you. So So when I was in the 9th grade in Calvin Simmons Junior High, which is a school in East Oakland, I volunteered for the first time to help my math teacher tutor students in the class. I was teaching 7th graders how to add fractions, and I loved it. When I was at UC Berkeley, I joined Chale, Chicanos and Latinos for Empowerment, a student-led organization that tutor high school students in East Oakland. So we went in there to the high schools and tutor our children. But when I was also part of NECHA, we also fought for ethnic studies because we believe that it was important for children to learn, their history so they can understand where they're coming from and understand their current situation and fight for change. When I was also part of NECHA, I also held my first protest sign in 1992 against police brutality against brown and black children. And I was protesting the presence of police in our school because they were mainly targeting Latino and African-American students. When I was part of Bay Area Women Against Rape, I also did many support groups at local high schools here in Oakland and OUSD, again, to support children that were traversing post-traumatic stress disorder, that were suicidal. And the purpose of the support groups was really to help them, alleviate some of that pain so that they can continue, to go to school and study. I also was part of Bay Area Wilderness Training, a nonprofit that creates equitable outdoor experience for low-income youth and color. So under BOTH guidance, I took high school and middle school students who had endured trauma to overnight nature healing retreats to Yosemite, Mount Shasta, and Black Oak. I also participated in the SSC of Howard Elementary, and I'm a parent advocate for Parent Voices. And, I collected signatures, I organized a Canvas phone bank and poll counted for Measure C. Thanks.
Thank you. Our final speaker regarding this question is Mr. Taylor.
Hi there. So just a little bit about my background. I worked at Youth Uprising. I worked for Alternatives in Action. I worked for Safe Passages. These are 3 of the leading nonprofits inside of Oakland, and they have served as lead support agencies for all high schools, middle schools, and elementaries, providing enrichment programs and services. Now I work at Oakland Public Education Fund, and this is what I'm saying. This is what I do now. This is what I'm currently paid to do. I'm the fiscal sponsorship coordinator. In my position, what I currently was working on was a project called the Rapid Relief Fund. The Rapid Relief Fund, we raised $2.5 million to distribute amongst all the high schools in Oakland. The principals were able to identify which students at their schools were having really, really, really hard financial, were falling on some hard financial times, and they were able to distribute $400 stimulus packages directly to the families. So that's what I'm about. I'm about real projects that work. And prior to that, I was at McClymonds for 5 years. I was a part of the team that wrote the grant for the Oakland Best Buy Teen Tech Center. It was the 11th Best Buy Teen Tech Center that was built in the country. It's the intersection for all things technology. My primary role in that position was to make sure that kids understood that there's intersectionality in all things to technology, because we live right at the foot of Silicon Valley. So why not prepare you for a job that is going to be around for a very, very long time, that's innovating the way that we all live? Prior to that, I'm working with the Boys and Girls Club on 86th and High Street to develop a basketball team for kids right now during COVID. Where are you going to practice in a safe space to play basketball? That's me.
Thank you. Moving on to our third question, and we'll be directing it towards Mr. Valerio first. The question: do you support Proposition 15, Schools and Community First initiative? What other suggestions do you have for securing additional funding and other resources needed for the district from the corporate community or other sources? And how would you go about securing it? Mr. Valerio.
Can you repeat the last part? Sorry.
Sure. I'll repeat the whole thing. Do you support Prop 15, the Schools and Community First initiative? What other suggestions do you have to secure additional funding and other resources needed for the district from the corporate community or from other sources? And how would you go about securing those additional funds and resources?
Thank you for your question. Okay, I'm good. Sorry about that. I just want to make sure I was on mute. That's a good question. I'm absolutely in support for Proposition 15. I believe that it's definitely a step in the right direction, considering the fact that we've been facing divestment since 1978 with Prop 13. And since then, we've seen the detrimental impacts of divestment to our public education. Prop 15 is definitely a good effort and a good step in the right direction to start building up investment again in our public schools. One thing I will suggest also is the fact that this is a statewide issue. It isn't just something that's impacted Oakland, it's also impacted other urban settings like LA, like Salinas, like Richmond, like Hayward. Schools in Sacramento right now, which are facing fiscal insolvency because of the lack of support and resources. One of the biggest things we definitely need to consider are how are we actually allocating or actually collecting our revenue currently right now. As right now we're facing a moment when the largest industries, and I don't have to go and give names, when the largest industries have paid $0 in taxes in the last year, if not the last 2 years. How can we improve allocation when we need to actually improve how we're collecting our revenue statewide? And more importantly, we should actually be looking at this regionally as opposed, and as we know that the inflation tends to differ by county and by community. Some areas tend to earn more than others. So if that's the case, if that's the biggest issue that people are facing, then we could definitely be innovative in how we create a tax structure around regional areas based on their earning and incomes, where we can then direct it and allocate it to the direction of public schools within their region.
Time's up.
Thank you. Next, Ms. Molina, please respond to the same question.
Yes, I wholeheartedly support Proposition 15. And if I wasn't running, I'll be out there pounding those doors on behalf of Proposition 15. Yes, I'm 100% committed to it. So in terms of the second question, how do we provide a stable, resilient OUSD budget? So I have 8 different ideas. One is environmental alternatives to infrastructure and change to reduce current cost. Second, stop unnecessary and expensive consulting services. I come from working in the nonprofit area for 12 years, and I worked under the umbrella of the Family Justice Center, which is a cohort of 80 plus agencies. These are your consultants, and most of these consultants will do it for free because that's why they're here. They're a nonprofit working for the betterment of the community. So we need to stop with expensive consulting services. Third, vacant OUSD property should generate income by providing low-income housing for unsheltered students, or dormitory styles or family-style housing for teachers. That will also generate income for our schools. At the local level, I propose a luxury home. Remember, it's a luxury home change of ownership tax, and defunding also both the county and the local police department to generate more money. At the state level, I will continue to support Proposition 15, but at the federal level, we need to form a national coalition to increase funding for public education. I will believe that we're going to take Congress back, so we have to take opportunity of this sweep of Congress so we can generate more money for our children. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Taylor, please respond to the same question.
I definitely am in support of Prop 15, but what I find highly privileged is this idea or this notion that the parents that we're going to be serving are well aware of what Prop 15 is. So the first thing that I would do is educate my committees, my parents and my students, so that they understand what this tax break is and why it's important for us to vote for it. Furthermore, I would look at other ways to innovate a lot of how these processes are happening and information is being distributed. A lot of people, it's representative government. So I wouldn't come with just my ideas of how I think we can make money or what I think is the best solution, because that might not be exactly what the community that I'm serving wants. So I think, again, I would take these things back to my committees and to the schools that I'm serving. I would be in those schools talking with families and students and teachers, making sure that we are all collectively coming up with a community idea of what we need to do to make things better. Lastly, as I start to think about the tenets of politics and the way the laws are set in place, a lot of things, people are speaking as if they have the power to change. You can't build trust when the system is not designed for trust to live. You know, we have to write policies that are going to change some of the code around education. You can't do it from this position. We don't have the power to affect change in a way that it is going to make some of the changes that we're talking about. So we have to bring the community to the table so that we can do it together.
Thank you. Mr. Thompson, please respond.
Yes, I totally agree with supporting Proposition 15 because we're looking at how to leverage funds in order to bring us out of the situation that we find ourselves in presently. So I think it's very important that we do support Proposition 15. But the other things, the other sources of income, I think are very important. And so for number one, I would look at ADA. Now, ADA, that's average daily attendance. That's not the same as enrollment. Our ADA in the East Oakland schools, unfortunately, not all, but unfortunately in some, it's lower than it should be. I would like to bring up ADA to at least 92%. Now, that would have an effect on our local control accountability plan. That's the LCAP. And it would also have some effect on the local control funding formula. And that's the LCFF. Now, when you look at bringing up ADA, that's bringing more money into the schools from the state. The second thing I would do is I would really look at grants. I'm not a professional grant writer, but I have written grants as a principal of a school, and I have probably about 85% success rate in writing grants. That needs to be done, especially in a situation where you have kids who can actually benefit from the monies that can be accrued through grant writing. And I see my time is up. Yeah, I better stop.
Okay, thank you.
Yes.
Our next question will be directed first to Ms. Molina. Here's the question. What do you think OUSD's budget priorities should be given current budget constraints? And do you think further reducing the number of schools will be necessary over the next few years? If school closures are not considered as one means to help balance the budget, what other specific means do you propose?
Okay, so to balance the budget, no, I don't propose closing schools. I mean, in District 7, that is a devastation for my community if you were to go close the school, because the whole community revolves around the school. I mean, children's schools need to be within walking distance, because my community sometimes has to make a choice between putting gas in their car or pay for the next meal. So the further you have schools from the community, the harder it will be for children to attend school, and the larger the absentees for those children will be. So I'm against the school closure. So what do I propose? Again, some of the things that I have mentioned before. In addition, I do have 12 years of grant writing. I was very successful at it. There was a point in history in OUSD where millions of dollars were left on the table, you know, because nobody wrote the grants for it. So we have to constantly be searching funds at the federal, state, county, and local level, because there's money out there, you know, and that comes from someone that has worked in a nonprofit for 12 years. I think the biggest priority, again, is to maintain a resilient and transparent budget, but we also have to deal with teacher attrition. And the hardest thing and the most damaging thing that can happen to a student is really to lose their teacher. You know, so and that the attrition rate of teachers in Oakland is rising, and we have to make sure that we're passing the local bonds, the local laws, to make sure that they're earning a sustainable wage, because Oakland is becoming very expensive and unaffordable to a teacher based on the pay rate that they're receiving. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Taylor, please respond to the question.
The first thing that I would prioritize is student safety. Working at McClymonds and Castlemont, what I can tell you is that it's not safe. It hasn't been safe for a very long time. And it's just not, we're lucky a lot of things just have not hit the news. But it is really not a safe environment. And we need to really get that under wraps. Secondarily, I would work on food. At all of the schools that I've been man, if you want kids happy and you want teachers happy and you want faculty and staff happy, then provide some good food on your campuses. Now I know that they're opening a food center or a site in the West by McClymonds, but again, who's cooking that food and what's it going to taste like? Lastly, I would also look at salaries, because again, it is impossible for a teacher. I believe that principals and teachers are asked to do an impossible thing, especially for the amount of money that we're paying them. So we wonder why we're underperforming. We wonder why it's a revolving door, because we don't treat people like we value them. If we value them and we love them, we figured out how to pay them a livable wage. And the last thing that I'm going to say, I know I said that before, this is the last thing. I would bring my committees into the fold. I would not make a decision on my own, because that's when you get into danger, thinking that you are the all-knowing person to answer for an entire community, especially District 7. This is the largest district in all of OUSD. So I would not make a decision by myself, so that parents wouldn't come up to the school board meetings like, Bronché, why are you doing this?
Thank you. Mr. Thompson? You're on mute.
I think you asked about if we support Proposition 15.
No, this was about OUSD's budget priorities.
Gotcha. By all means. Yes, I think we need to look at our budget, because if you think about COVID right now, COVID has taken all of this to a new level. In addition to simply saying that we are deficit in our budget, we've identified specific things that we're deficit in, like distance learning, like making sure that all of the kids have all of the equipment they need in order to actually access school and what needs to be done each day. So I think what we have done is we've come to the point where we have to make real decisions. Yes, unfortunately, and I think this is difficult for many people to handle, I am willing to deal with tough decisions. I have talked to several individuals, even as far as the state level, and they have informed me that it's inevitable. If we are going to pull our budget together, we are going to have to look at whether the number of schools we have are viable for this area. Now, I was a part of the small schools movement years ago, almost 20 years ago. And what we tried to do is we tried to have the same number of schools more schools with the same number of dollars. That's impossible to do. Okay, there's red. I'm sorry, I have to stop.
Thank you. Mr. Valerio.
Thank you. OUSD budget priorities. The first one will be to reevaluate the budgetary items we're currently allocating, whether they're actually supporting academic students in low-performing schools. Secondly, it will be to make sure that the schools themselves have the revenue and the support for health and safety measures to be implemented when students do return to school. And with that, also to bridge the digital divide we currently face right now, which goes back to the student attendance right now, when we have a 20% truancy rate because of the issue that not all students have access to internet or computers. We need to take that in the front, as well as making sure they're healthy and they're not in the midst of COVID-19 conditions. Also, the third thing will be to create a transparency within the budget decision-making process by making sure that we create the platform where we have community input and how decisions are being made, and also what's being allocated to the school sites along the way. And the fourth thing that's important also is to find additional sources of revenue. We need to be fiscally solvent, but in the same time, while we're reevaluating our budget, we're also going to find additional funding to make sure that we can actually provide the programs that could be kept sustainable, and making sure that the students get the academic support they need, even if it means working with the city and county and state agencies to make sure they provide those services at the school sites. And more importantly, is to avoid school closures. School closures have been detrimental. I think I'm right. I think I'm out of time.
Okay, thank you. For our final prepared question, we'll start with Mr. Taylor, and here is the question. According to the GO reports, District 7 schools include some of the most persistently underperforming schools in our city. For example, Reach, Castlemont, Markham, and Rise are all schools where less than 10% of low-income Black or Latinx students are at grade level in math and English. How do you feel about this issue? And what are 3 things you would do to ensure East Oakland students have access to a high-quality school, be it district or charter, in their neighborhood? Mr. Taylor.
I'm going to answer that question in reverse. The 3 things that I would do first is I would ensure that the school does not get closed, because what's being reported may not be the truth. And I would put 80% of my faith in the fact that it is not true what's being reported. And even the numbers across the district are not true. Grades aren't really reflecting performance, and the truth isn't being told. So the first thing I would do is an internal investigation by a third party, someone that's not going to have a bias to the district and tell us something just to keep us quiet. Secondarily, I would come up with an action plan to get our students up to grade level so that they can really be thriving in society. Forget about just school, because it's bigger than school. What are you going to do when you become an adult? How are you going to live? How are you going to move around this world? So that would be my second thing. We got to get you up to where you need to be academically so that you can move and thrive as just a human being. Lastly, I would work with teachers and administrators and parents together to really identify the first place to move. I wouldn't want to make that decision by myself, because it takes a village. It's not one person. And I hope I won't even carry that on my shoulders as the representative for District 7. I'm not responsible for any kid getting an awesome academics. We did that together. Me, you, your mom, your teacher, the principals, the whole entire community.
Thank you. Mr. Thompson, please respond to the question.
Yes. I think, number one, and I appreciate your question, because we need to shed light on the fact that we have kids in the East area who are not performing as other students. So I would, number one, require that equity in the class offerings are provided to all students. Unfortunately, we have students who are graduating from school and think that they are qualified to go on, but they haven't taken the A to G courses in order to be eligible for college. So I think that one step is the primary thing that I would do. I would make sure that there is equity among all of the schools. No more of this. Some schools have and some schools do not have. I would make sure that there is equity among all schools. And then the second thing is I would help implement the fact that we need to engage in direct instruction, or something called explicit instruction. That's how I achieved what I achieved in my school where I teach presently, where I had 80% of my kids who met or exceeded their targets in reading in only 6 months. These are things that I have done, and I know they work. The last thing that I would do, and I would make sure that it happened for the kids, is I would require our superintendent to make sure that she gives a report of where each school is, what is being done at that school in order to bring up the grades of our children.
Thank you. Mr. Valerio?
Thank you for that question. It's outrageous to see that in the current state of our public schools today, we have those conditions where students are falling behind in grade level reading and math. And it's a disability, and it's just outrageous. It's not acceptable. It's not something we should be proud about, and it's something for us to justify for it. It is what it is. It's not. It is what it is. We have ownership of our public education, and we got to direct it the right way to make sure our students are at the grade level reading and math. the three things that we'll pursue in trying to make those changes at District 7, since we've been heavily impacted because of school closure, is to avoid further school closures. We need to cap on the school closures. We need to reevaluate what we're allocating to these low-performing schools, and we need to supply the support they need and the program they need to make sure the students are provided a pathway to success in making sure they graduate at the reading and math levels that we expect them to be at by the time they graduate. And that means by allocating more funds, if we can, reevaluating the budget to allocate more funds, work with city and county and state agencies to make sure the students feel safe, they feel cared for, they feel that they are owners of their education, and more importantly, that they feel that they are part of the larger community, where they feel that they can want to go to school, they feel comfortable going to school, and they want to be there, since it is their second home. And quite frankly, it is the backbone and the soul of the community in which they live in. Thank you.
Thank you. And finally, Ms. Molina.
Hi. So the majority of schools in District 7 are classified as stress or stressed areas, meaning that they're high in environmental stress factors such as violent crime, unemployment, poor quality, and limited food security. We must acknowledge that people of color have endured generational injustices. Not acknowledging the history of our people of color is what continues to fail Black, Brown, Indigenous, and APA students. Students in the Flatland need more resources because they're facing different issues, both historical, economical, and social, than children from the hills. I have lived in the flatlands of East Oakland for 35 years. I have witnessed and endured hundreds of illegal dumping incidents, public defecation and urination, physical altercations, drive-by shootings, four in the last 12 months, by the way, cries for help, such as "I'm going to get killed," public incidents of domestic violence, countless of home and car burglaries, sexual battery, sexual verbal abuse, sexual harassment, discrimination against elder individuals with mental disabilities, family neighbors and neighbors' lifetime struggles with substance abuse disorders, community poverty and hunger, predatory male persecution of social workers, police brutality, and child abuse. For the past 35 years, I have also, along with the children, breathed and inhaled the toxic air and the contaminated soil of East Oakland, triggering severe asthma attacks as a child, as an adult. So what is the number one solution? We need to provide more resources, more equitable resources to our children. We need to heal them before that they can learn. Thank you.
Thank you. I want to thank all the candidates for your thoughtful responses to our prepared questions. Now's the time for candidates to answer questions from the audience. Our question sorter, Elaine McCarty, will be asking those questions. Elaine, could you please begin with the attendees' questions?
Thank you, Ms. Lewis. So our first question is, in 2021, OUSD will no longer have its own police force. How would you reimagine school safety? For example, whole school restorative justice, counseling services, etc. And we'll start with Mr. Thompson, please.
Yes, thank you very much. And I think that's a really good question, because it's time for us to really think about how are we going to deal with this situation? And I think you're correct in that if we're not going to have police services anymore, we need to actually figure out where the service is most effective. And that means, and I feel as a teacher, it's in counseling, it's also in understanding social justice. It's also understanding how to dismantle the racist and the classist systems that are existing right now. And what I'm speaking of is how we disproportionately send Black boys, not Black girls, but Black boys to the office, because we have an established system. And I know this might make some people feel uncomfortable, but I speak the truth. We have a system that's set up where individuals are afraid of Black boys. Black boys want to learn just like any other person. Therefore, what we have to do is look at putting resources in counseling, putting resources in social justice, putting resources in PBIS, making certain that we uphold those kinds of things that have been dismantled because there are no longer police services there. We know that the police service did an injustice to a lot of our kids because they came with the wrong attitude. We have to readdress that situation for all of our kids. I'm sorry, Miss McCartney, you're on mute.
Thank you. And so thank you, Mr. Thompson. Our next candidate.
I'm not sure that people heard who the next candidate was. So that's Victor Valerio. Could you answer that question, please?
Thank you. I'm actually was supporting. Thank you for the question. First of all, I was supported the idea of funding the police force from the school budget. I never understood what the reason why we had a police force to begin with. When I was attending Fremont High School back in 1996 and 1997 to 2001, we didn't have a police force. We did have restorative justice programs at the time. I was a part of the Youth Together program and Safe Patches when I was attending high school. And I saw the success of those programs. But it also demonstrated that we did need to invest and allocate more services to the schools because we divested from counseling, as it was mentioned earlier before, mental and health counseling, which is desperately needed because we live in an area which is very different from other communities within the Oakland School District, believe it or not. We encounter more stress. We encounter more post-traumatic stress because of the violence most children face today. Most children have worked with one parent, or they live with their grandparents, or they're couch surfing with friends' homes, one day and the next. So I totally believe in restorative justice programs to be invested in our schools. I believe establishing counseling services for mental health, working along with city and county and state agencies to make sure that students have access to them. And more importantly, we need to start reevaluating how are we helping our students, what programs are in place, and what additional programs we need to add. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Valerio. And our next candidate to answer this is Ms. Molina.
I can't hear you, but I'm assuming it's me, so I'm going to go. So, one of the most difficult things that I have seen as an activist is really the imprisonment of children. As I already went down the line of all the stressors that I have witnessed along with the children here in the Flatlands, you can only see that children are only showing at school what they're enduring. They're not going to tell you, this is what happened to me last night, but they're going to show it up by maybe not performing well at school, being absent-minded, harming other children, or acting up in class. So for me, I support wholeheartedly the Black organizing projects demand for police-free schools. I agree and support their movement to create safe, nurturing schools by implementing PBIS. Practices and restorative justice. Based on the fact that students' amygdala does not fully mature into the age of 24, models such as PBIS should always be used as the first line of intervention for mediating students' behavior. Studies by academics have shown that early psychological intervention diverts behavioral problems in children. Therefore, I support making a greater investment in counselors and mentors who are trained in PBIS restorative justice and creating police-free schools. Our children need intervention and advocacy, not cruel and inhuman punishment and imprisonment. I remember seeing one time a child who was getting FDs on her report card, and when she earned her trust, she told me that she was being sexually exploited. When the services were provided for her, she became a straight A student. So there's talent in the Flatlands. We just have to eliminate the harm. Thank you.
Well, I'm assuming it's on me. So let's be clear. The contract with the police was not like they were SSOs. They weren't on campus protecting our students, so it wouldn't be any different than what we have right now. Police show up late, just like where I live right now. I was actually involved in a shooting last week. 4 days after my mother passed away, my car was struck with 3 bullets. When the police came, they assumed that I was involved in the actual situation. And instead of treating me like a victim, they treated me like a criminal. So More of the same. That's what's going to continue to happen. Even with police on campuses, while I was at McClymonds and at Castlemont, whenever we had a crisis and we actually called police, because that's the only time police come out, when you have a crisis inside of OUSD. So it needs to be like a kid being 5150'd or some kind of major issue on campus. Other than that, they're not there. And let's be clear, it's only 7 officers. It wasn't like we had this huge task force. So it was already a waste of money from the beginning. And it's not like we're saving a lot of money from it either. So we still need to figure this whole situation out around safety, in my opinion, because I just said that I didn't feel safe at Castlemont before, and I don't feel safe at Castlemont now. So it's just more of the same. What I propose, though, is bringing parents into my committees, teachers into my committees, and students into my committees. And as a community, we come up with a new design for how we want to keep our own children safe, kind of like the Black Panthers did. Police.
Can
I can't hear anything.
Yeah, I can't hear you, Elaine.
Neither can I.
You're muted now. Looks like you're unmuted. But we still...
Okay, Elaine, that's okay. I have a list of the questions, and so we're going to move to the last question. And I think the next person that starts with it will be Victor Valerio. So let me propose that question, and that is, how will you support the recruitment and retention of qualified and experienced teachers in Oakland Public Schools? And so, Victor Valerio, would you please respond first?
Victor, you're muted.
Can you hear me?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, thank you. Let me restate that again. I would encourage for us to start taking a step back and reevaluating why we're having problems with teacher retention to begin with. First of all, we got to make sure that we provide services and programs for our teachers to make sure housing affordability is one of the issues we can provide them by creating a program or collaborating with the city in order to house them. As we know, inflation and their expenses have gone skyrocketed in the last 10 years. And also important that we work collaboratively with our school sites where teachers can actually feel empowered to go in the process of hiring their teachers within the school district, making sure that they work with the human resources and provide them with programs and create a feeder pattern with different teacher training programs to feed into the Oakland School District, and providing them benefits that they would be attracted for them to stay in Oakland. And all this goes along with making sure we have a viable communication with the teacher unions, with the school district, and with the community along the way. One of the biggest factors that we've seen, actually there's 3 biggest factors, has been affordable housing, empowerment in the school sites, and thirdly, more importantly, is that the school teachers actually can have a say in what and how they could approach and solving the issues and problems at their school site.
Okay, thank you. Christina Molina, please.
Yes. So, addressing teacher attrition is critical to stemming the country's growth of teacher shortage crisis. Research finds that high turnover schools have a negative impact on student learning, as many inexperienced and underqualified teachers are often hired to fill empty spots. So in order to retain teachers, we need to create sustainable policies in the area of compensation. We need to pass measures at the local, county, state, and federal level to fund teacher salaries and schools conditions. Not only that, teachers are demanding more resources in classroom, and we need to provide those resources. And also, in particular, for the teachers that are teaching here in the flatlands, we need to certify that the air that they're breathing, that the soil that they're teaching, and that the water that they're drinking is free of toxins. Because right now, the principal of Acorn and NCAMPAS sent letters out to the community that the soils in these 2 schools in my district are contaminated with TCE. And long exposure to that chemical, will cause our health damages. So we really need to make sure that the teachers are being provided, first of all, with sustainable salaries, a clean environment to teach, and also support for them to teach a curriculum to our students. Thank you.
Okay, Bronché Taylor, would you please respond to the question?
Yes, the first thing that I would do is actually I would utilize the teacher committee to ask them what are some of the things that they really feel like need to change first in order to make this a more enjoyable job. And after that, I would definitely start looking for ways to better fund the district as a whole, but not from a local level, but from a federal and a state level. Education has always been underfunded just nationally by the federal government. The budget it's really sad if you ever look at the education budget in comparison to the budget for war or for lots of other things, but it makes entirely no sense. So we need to prioritize education in a way that we can really fund it to actually make some real changes for teachers. But from this position, again, this is not something that I'd be able to fix independently by myself. And so I would inform teachers and I would inform parents, and we would have to form a coalition so that we could go to the state capitol or write some policy so that we can get more money from Gavin Newsom and whoever the next president is, prayerfully, not Donald Trump. And if I have more time, the last thing that I want to say around teachers is we also need to change our hiring practices, because we bring in a lot of teachers who aren't necessarily a fit for the community that they serve. Cultural relevance is super important. So as we talk about grades and we talk about kids being receptive to learning, we need to make sure that we have teachers that either understand or reflect the community that they come from, and down to the way that they speak.
Thank you. Clifford Thompson, would you please respond?
Yes. Thank you very kindly for that question, because that question is being grappled with throughout the entire state, and dare I say throughout the entire nation, because we're trying to figure out how do we recruit and retain qualified teachers for our kids. I propose this because I have been a principal, and so I've had to recruit teachers and also retain teachers, so I understand it too well. I understand that according to research says that most teachers want qualified professional development. That would keep them there. But as a principal, as a person who lives in Oakland, I know that they also need a competitive wage. So we need to make sure that their salary will allow them to be here, to stay in Oakland, but then make certain that we have our ear to what they're actually saying, because they'll probably ask for good professional development. That professional development would require, I think, them to understand that relationship, communication, and culture are three important factors that must be implicit in all of their learning. Secondly, after they have that, then we want to make sure that our teachers, are given the opportunity to have that qualified professional development to work on, to establish, to make better, to embellish those three components of relationship, community, and also culture. That way, teachers would be able to exist in our classroom and provide a very healthy education.
Thank you, candidates. Now I'd like to turn it back to Diane Lewis.
Thank you. Now the candidates will make closing statements. We will reverse the order from the opening statements. Each candidate will have 1 minute for a closing statement. First, Christina Molina.
Thank you. So, well, thank you once again to the League of Women Voters. Happy 100th anniversary. And thank you for this wonderful opportunity. You know, I have been endorsed by the Oakland Rising Action because of my 20 years of activism and parent leadership in East Oakland. I've also been endorsed by Planned Parenthood Mar Monte because of my strong stand for reproductive rights and my agenda to dismantle rape culture in our public schools that continue to hunt young girls in their college years and in their first jobs. I have been endorsed by OUSD Vice President Trustee Trustee Shanti Gonzalez, and Trustee Rosie Torres, and many progressive teachers and other political figures. Please visit my website to learn more about me at votechristinamolina.com, and that's Christina with a K. Thank you, everybody, for listening to us in this wonderful debate.
Thank you. Our next closing statement from Victor Valeria.
I want to thank everybody for the invitation to participate, and I want to reiterate that I'm running because I want to help make the community better. I want to strengthen public education in our neighborhoods because families entrust public neighborhood schools because it's what is accessible for their families and their students. And for it to be successful, we got to make sure the quality is invested in our neighborhood schools. I was born and raised in Oakland, and I totally understand our community. I walked in the students' shoes before. I understand what they face on a day-to-day basis. Yeah, I've seen the good and the bad, and I'm coming here as a former student. I'm currently actually being supported and endorsed by Roseanne Torres, Shanti Gonzalez, Wellstone Democrat Renewal Club, and Educators for Democrat Schools. We all share the belief that public education is a public good and a public benefit. And we want to make sure it remains that way, and we improve upon it for future generations in our neighborhoods, especially in District 7. Thank you.
Thank you. Clifford Thompson, you're next.
Yes, I just want to go back to question 2 because I didn't hear it all, but some of my professional experience is I've been a classroom teacher for 17 years. I've been an administrator for 20 years. I've been a secondary school coordinator for San Mateo County. I took all of that experience. I've gone back into the classroom, and now I'm in a classroom in Richmond that mirrors the students and composition here in East Oakland. I left a Hill School in Oakland where I was placed first, and I said, no, I need to go someplace where I can use my skill. I was a gifted and talented education coordinator. I tutored students here in the East Oakland area. I also served as a librarian at Parker Elementary. When I did my doctoral degree, I decided to use 3 Oakland sites for that. That's Ralph Bunche, if you guys know what it is. It was called Bunche Center for Redirection back then. Ile Omade, and Dewey Academy. So I just wanted to tell you that, and I would appreciate your endorsement tonight. And you can go to Cliff, CLIF, 4, the number 4, oaklandschools.org.
Thank you. Mr. Taylor, your closing statement.
League of Women Voters, I love you just for already doing your job and voting. But now it's time for us to get more women to vote. It's time for us to get the part of the community that is not awakened, that does not understand that I will be serving, to come to the table and understand how important it is for them to know what's going on when it comes to education. It doesn't matter if one student is winning. If we're not all winning, collectively, Oakland is losing, and I am tired of losing. I look and feel and walk in the community that the students I'll be representing come from. I'll never call it the Flatlands because my family's from the East. I'm so Oakland that my family's, the first home that my grandmother lived in is in Preservation Park. So I speak to you with my whole heart. I have the endorsements don't matter. What matters is that I'm really here to make change, and my heart is in it. And it's bigger than sitting at the table to make people feel good. You know, it's about the kids who are not winning. It's about students who graduate from Oakland, but can't stay at colleges and can't come back. I appreciate the time. Thank you.
Thank you all. On behalf of the League of Women Voters of Oakland and the National Coalition of 100 Black Women, Oakland Bay Area chapter, I want to thank the candidates for running for this office and for their participation this evening. I also want to thank the audience for attending and meeting the candidates. Please go to the League's website, lwvoakland.org, for each candidate's individual response to the League's Education Committee's questionnaire that these school board candidates have completed. For further information about upcoming forums, the candidates, and ballot measures, please visit the League's award-winning and easy-to-use website, lwvoakland.org or votersedge.org/CA. There you will find information about candidates and ballot measures and links to other sources of information about the upcoming election. Members of the League of Women Voters do the hands-on work to safeguard democracy. While we never endorse a candidate, we are directly involved in shaping important issues to keep our community strong. If you would like to be involved with the men and women helping to make democracy work, it's easy to join the League. We encourage you to visit our website, again, lwvoakland.org. Visit us on Facebook and follow us on Twitter. Look at the League's Oakland Easy Voter Guide inserted in the October 14th edition of the East Bay Express. Similarly, if you'd like more information or to join the Oakland Bay Area chapter of the National Coalition of 100 Black Women, visit our website at 100blackwomen.com, and that's spelled out, 100blackwomen.com. The deadline to register to vote is October 19th. If you have moved or changed your name or wish to change your party affiliation since you last registered, you need to re-register by October 19th. Online voter registration is available at the Secretary of State's website. It's at sos.ca.gov. Remember to vote by mail or at the vote centers, which will be open on October 31st for early voting. And I also wanted to add, if you have not completed the census, be sure to do so. Encourage your family, your friends, and your neighbors to vote. We thank the candidates again and the audience for attending this evening, and the forum is now concluded. Thank you all. Good night.